Hello, everybody, and welcome to our big finale for season 6. And this is a long one, just by the episode length, so we'll have plenty to talk about, I think.
Yeah, and so just quickly before we start, let's get to the awards in the chat. We see what we are always talked to uh, on about various topics. So welcome to the stream. We will also get to it. And before as always, welcome to the stream. And we've been doing a lot of streams recently. Yes, I also hats off to you for that, and of course we've got the resident Joe Oakland thanks Matthew in the chat, who by the way actually he had who by the way actually he had some kind of um had some kind of on till about these I've streamed since in how 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 well they are prepared for and how well researched we are and stuff. And he also commented about our chemistry as well, which for and always saying that. So thanks again, Matthew for that. And
Daniel,
then
is the only streams, these are the only streams I take notes for. So that I do
yeah,
prepare. This is one of the few times I sort of do proper note taking with a little book.
yeah, and unfortunately for you, your and a source of comedies basically killed it.
He'll find
So
another one next series. He'll find
yeah,
another one.
okay, okay, I can just imagine because one of the characters it's so like oh, it's so like Mr. Kennedy from the in as if you've seen the in between emails, Matthew, you know is that too. And you know that too. But we're not here to talk about series four and stuff. We're here to talk about the finale. Yeah,
Yep, we're finally wrapping up, folks. We after this, we're halfway through the whole lot of Line of Duty.
yeah, yeah. What else? What's my trick? I thought, yeah.
Well,
So,
hello, quickly, hello, Wendy and Darren. So they've just popped in to say hi.
yeah, how you two? Well, I hope you're enjoying. I hope you are all enjoying the reviews. And right. So, right. So, I can't wait to start us off. Shall we? What are your thoughts on this episode?
Well, where do I begin? This is one of the few times that. Oh, hi, Lee. Good to see you. This is one of the few times that an extended time for a finale actually works because I don't
Yeah,
think there's anything wasted, and there's a lot going on in this episode, and it just ramps up more and more and more. And I've got to say, I think this is one of my favourite finales. Like, there's other ones later which I like as well, but this is one that I was excited for you to watch. It was one of those that I was like, I can't wait to see what Daniel thinks.
see, it's an interesting setup up in a eminent elderly farm. I know because because the, as a large uncovered that's mainly overused, and I felt that was kind of interesting an interesting sort of concept because if you think about how the past and is the past finale that we've spoke about on the channel has been more sort of action based, if you get what I mean. So this was kind of this was kind of a change, but in a good sort of sense.
Yeah, and it's sort of, and it doesn't disappoint on the action at the end. Let's put it that way. But yeah, I think
Yeah,
obviously with the setup of Steve from last episode, he's got it's riveting his sort of journey in this episode. You
yeah,
sort of see Kate, who's I think from for all the stuff we've sort of been saying, oh, we're not quite happy with her. I think she's almost
yeah.
this is a bit of a redemption episode for her, and
To
it's
me, she is kind of annoying still, based on her actions in the past two series. It still hasn't really sat right with me. You know, people like, I'm sorry, there's usually, there's usually a couple in that picture. If I
oh
need
yes,
to
of course there is.
use
It's
from
you.
me, that was, yeah,
So yeah, I think we have to start because, like I said, this is a lot. So we're probably best to start actually going through it now.
yeah,
So we open with Fairbanks sort of picking up the lead of Joe doing basically the looking at photos last episode.
yeah, because yeah, because he was eventually told to stay back at the station when the last episode them shut off. So basically, it's almost to like a continuation of his own. Of the almost well, there is a ending of the of you because obviously as you find out the obviously as you find out he's changing the power and go right back to the and go right back to old dreams and all us.
Yeah, but to start off with, obviously they've got Joe basically recognizing Fairbanks. So they
Yeah,
bring him back in with that new evidence.
yeah,
And to begin with, he's doing the same sort of routine as new. I can't remember. I can't remember.
yeah,
And then they said, "Well, we've got this new evidence." And as soon as they say that, you can see the actor. And he's, I suppose, we haven't sort of given the actor enough credit. As soon as that's like muttered, you can see his body language starts to change, doesn't it?
yeah. Who's the
I
actor by
don't
the
know. I
way?
feel bad because he's really good. I
Yeah.
didn't. So whoever he
Yeah,
is,
chat, we
yeah.
probably will make it one of the smartest chats on YouTube. So chat, correct, is who actually, who's the man
I love this. You
behind
just said we had a
the
comment about how we're so nice researched and we're
yeah,
prepared in these streams from Matthew.
uh,
And we're like,
Jesus,
oh, I don't know who the actor is. But anyway, he does a good job because he starts to sort of sit up more and the sort of the old I can't remember routine you can see starts to. Oh, here we go.
oh
Oh,
Jesus, here we go.
I thought that was the actor's name.
And I can't even pronounce that. George,
Corsican.
yeah,
Sorry, I'm terrible
yeah.
with surnames, but yeah, I think you got to give him credit in this scene.
Yeah, I can't really pronounce it either due to, uh, yeah,
So
I've
then,
never been good at pronunciation.
well, you're Scottish. It's part of being. It's part of your cultural heritage. So he starts to sort of sit up, and then Ted, as soon as that evidence gets said, all the niceties he sort of gave Fairbanks now have just gone, and we get a proper sort of Ted. I don't know what he just goes in on him. That's the best way to say it.
Yeah.
And he sort of just says, "I've always wondered how people like the individual from last episode from real life and others get away with this." And he basically says it's because the police didn't turn a blind eye to it. The police were a part of it. And he's basically saying you covered for these individuals. And he's sort of, and you can see he's starting to even get a bit nasty by the end, isn't he, Fairbanks?
Yeah, because all the fake charms and his ask, so to speak, you kind of get the impression that you kind of get the impression before that before that there's women in the interview took place, the ask is already starting to soar up.
Yeah, because it was like Kate was gradually getting less cordial, wasn't she, with her replies? And he was reacting to that. And then it ends in basically Ted arresting him.
Yep.
And then his sort of parting shot is
and yes, I hope you enjoyed that. You're only be directing in traffic for the rest of your sad to career, and it's a still I thought that is I am the way still I thought that is I am I think it's because it was so um it's because it was so sort of said in a violent sort of
It was a snarl. It was like an animal, wasn't it? Sort of who got backed into a corner, basically saying, I'm important. I'm big enough that it's like I can threaten you." But like we said, that's showing like Fairbanks what they showed as well, which is the layers are gradually and the sort of facade has been slipping throughout the last couple of episodes, and now we're fully seeing that he's a nasty piece of work. So, and then we start Steve's sort of worst day ever. Let's to put it lightly. Let's now.
Yeah, because it's up to check. It's up to check the burial records at first. But then he realised he's in his pocketbook.
Yeah, so first he realizes the pocketbook, doesn't he?
Yeah.
And then he clicks as soon as he's outside his car.
Yeah.
So then he's got two things, and so he does phone, doesn't he, saying my car's been stolen, and we know what's happened with his car, but he doesn't. And then he basically goes to Denton's residence, doesn't he?
Yeah.
It's like sort of searching for the notebook. And sort of halfway through, who comes knocking? Barging in?
And what he's getting on to that armed police to sort of usher him in, so he's been and so it's been arrested.
Yeah, and you can see Steve's completely, obviously, he's just woken up a bit. He's still groggy, and then this happens, so he's completely, you can see, confused, and sort of, and Dot has got an air of swag about him, hasn't he? It's like sort of he's sort of alpha male very much in this, the way he's acting. Yes, it is Wookiee. It is on BritBox. Line of Duty, I've been told.
Yeah. But by the
And
way,
Netflix as well if you've got Netflix.
yeah, but by the way, yeah, but by the way, don't just jump to series three. You have to watch the two previous series, otherwise you won't really get the whole sort of jigsaw type storytelling.
Yeah,
That's, I'm sorry, that's a sight moving. That's a
no,
sight moving.
there's a lot of pieces, so I
Yeah,
can get what it's built up. Wookie, that threads from
yeah,
even series one will be relevant in series three.
yeah,
This is instead of doing what a certain showrunner's been doing, which is I'm going
yeah,
to randomly show you characters and scenes.
yeah,
This is actually how you do like a web sort of idea of lots of things that build
yeah,
up. So yeah, so
yeah,
now Steve's arrested, and he's sort of been put into custody, and then this is, like you said, a big chunk of this episode, which is Steve's interview.
yeah. Yeah. So, but right before that, then you get a good sort of close-up of Arnett needs facial expression is an absolute picture because when the woman at the desk is saying, I'm satisfied that you're that you're arrest is awful or whatever. She said, and she could just literally see his face, and it's
He's
almost
just like,
like a broken
yeah,
arm.
this is definitely, considering Steve's natural sort of demeanour is cocky to say the least.
Yeah,
He's usually very sure of himself.
yeah,
So this is the most downtrodden, the most broken you've seen him.
yeah.
Matthew, just shh. We don't say the bad man's name. That's why I just said certain showrunners.
Yeah, but don't say the evil bastards.
Yeah.
That was
So yeah, and I do think, and even though you'll say, "Oh, it's your boyfriend," I
right.
do think, um, oh God, this is how tired I am. I'm blanking on it. On the actress.
Oh, Jesus.
This is how
Um,
tired I am today.
right, so is it the, yeah, so it's the, yeah, so it's the interview next. So it's interviewed, but he gets interviewed by the women and Bruce. And like obviously he's off about the targets, but
Well,
uh,
yeah, it's
uh,
as like I said. You should. I'm tempted to show people my notes for this because there's so many. Right. So first, the first thing I've got of note is that they're trying to establish his alibi where he was when Denton got killed,
yeah,
and because he just happened to be by himself basically because he had a late night and an argument, and he
yeah,
drank. He happened to oversleep
yeah,
in the whole window when Dot shot Denton.
yeah,
So he can literally just say I was asleep. And this is
yeah,
the start also of Dot just every opportunity. He's winding Steve up, isn't he? He's poking at him. He's like taking the mick.
yeah.
He's
Um,
enjoying himself. He's playing with Steve.
yeah, yeah.
And then they bring up what he said then to Kate at the graveyard.
Oh yeah, about the phone call from last episode.
Oh no, no, no. We
Um,
like I said, there's so many
yeah,
things here. This when he said Lindsay's going to get what's coming.
yeah,
When Kate revealed that he'd been played, basically, to be fair, he was angry when he said that. So what Dot is doing in this sort of bit of the interview is he's trying to say you were angry with her. She'd played you. She'd made you look like a full, and that's why the inference was that's why he shot her, or one of the reasons you shot her. So he's trying to like make Steve out to be very angry, which he was.
Yeah.
So once again, what I said last week, Dot is doing what he does very cleverly, which is he's using truth, but he's twisting it for his agenda, which is to make Steve out to be what he isn't.
Yeah.
And then we get to the recording, which we haven't heard yet. We just knew she had this recording of them.
Oh yeah, because the recording from the first episode, I remember what we said about armlets for what this stuff, and you said is yeah, well, this comes back to haunt him here in the background. Yeah.
And we knew it was bad because he didn't want Denton to play it. When she had the whole, like, something justice it was called, wasn't it, when she wanted the apology.
Yeah.
She sort of had it on the table and he didn't want it. So we knew it was bad, but we actually hear it, and it's because we're on YouTube, we have to be a little bit careful what we say. Let's say it's very suggestive sound.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know. Like it's almost hanky panky, but not if you
Well, Steve is basically said we didn't go fully there. We went just before, and that's what you can hear.
Yeah.
So he's still maintaining that he never lied. He didn't fully do it.
Yes, Sudoku. Yes.
You can say that, Sudoku. We have to be good because we're the hosts on YouTube.
Yep, and Richard already hates our guts anyways. Yeah.
So we have to be careful to our overlords or Susan. So yeah, he just short of that is basically what he says happened. But with Steve's track record and the audio, it's not believable. From you can tell why Ted and everybody else is like, yeah, you did, didn't you? You went there with her.
Yeah.
Fully. And then we get to the service vehicle, which when he was suspended, he didn't sign back. And that's another thing Dot uses against him.
Yep, I know, and yeah, I know of the name, I know of the name of the service vehicle makes me what, actor Charles or whatever
Well,
it
that's
is.
how they speak.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that used to make me always giggle. When do people remember the bill? When like they'd speak to each other like that on the bill, and it used to just make me giggle every time.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that was never. He hadn't basically returned his car yet.
Yeah.
Is the easiest way to put it.
Mm-hmm.
And then we come back to the firearms, which, as Wendy actually pointed out, Steve hadn't signed it out with a date. So that's now being used, that it wasn't even returned according to the new slip.
Yeah.
Well, I say new, Dot is saying this is your slip, but it's now that the firearm was never returned.
Yeah.
So you've got him with a service vehicle which is used to kill Benton, and now this gun. So you're starting to see all the traps and all the things Dot has just sort of put there for Steve to run into almost at this point, and it's just the evidence. It's just coming up and up and up and up and up against Steve at this moment. And you can once again, Martin, I forgot, that's it. And you can see Martin sort of acting from that brokenness. You can see as more evidence is being said, even though he's fighting it, you can see it's starting to sort of dawn a little bit on him. Because I think beneath it all, Matthew, he did have some care for Denton. Beneath it all, I think
Yeah.
there was a bit of care there for her.
Yeah.
I could be wrong there, but that's why I think he was asking.
Yeah.
So, but then, like I said, even though he's been getting a bit angry, and you're starting to see the sort of realization. Now, this is why I think this interview seems so clever. Suddenly,
Yeah.
Steve is basically doing his job against Dot. He's bringing up all the inconsistencies.
Yeah, about how the envelope is how the envelope there was a deal made to the forensic murder results in the envelope being actually studied.
Yeah, and he sort of is saying, A, is there any evidence of me actually shooting her with that
Yeah,
gun? Me actually physically being in the car,
yeah,
which is something Doc could never fake because Steve was never in that car.
yeah,
So he's just sort of saying there should have been fingerprints, there should have been a lot more physical evidence or forensics,
yeah,
which is his first point. He then points out, well, if I had that gun not returned for as long
yeah,
as it's now saying I did, why didn't the commander in that station query
yeah,
it or raise it?
yeah,
And I think it's like I said, another point is, and I think I must have not clicked this when I was first watching, but you see Kate start to take notes now.
yeah.
As soon as Steve's starting to point out these glaring sort of issues and bits that don't quite connect.
Yeah, and she, again, in the end, her body language is starting to change. Like, I think in her head as well, and she's starting to kill Steve Cotton.
Yeah, you can see she's been very quiet and she's starting to take these little notes every time Steve is talking in this section.
Yeah,
And she sort of, well, Ted is, you can see it is, and like Wendy's talking about Ted's expressions, you can see this is getting to him. He's not sort of being a good poker face like Kate is.
yeah,
So now we're like, it's sort of like a tennis match now. Like Steve will say a few things and Dot will come back with something. So now Dot comes back with some more evidence, which is the plant linking the planted money.
yeah. Money in the gym bag, which is the money from the bride from the last series. It was
Yeah,
planted
so it's one like fiver, isn't it?
inside. Yeah,
And they obviously they do the test and they said it comes from the same source that
yeah,
Denton's hush money came from.
yeah,
And also there's a burner phone now in his car, which they
yeah,
say matches what the caddy or
yeah,
what we know from Harry, who was arrested a couple of episodes ago,
yeah,
used.
yeah. Because the whole uh, and yeah, because the whole southeast on the accent and the whole profile comes back up again.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
because that's one of his sort of take backs. That's when Steve basically explodes near the end, isn't it? So like I
yeah,
said, this is what's it's, and this is the thing. This is what this show does so well. It's a load of people technically sat in a room, and it's just like
yeah,
this interplay between Dot and Steve. Kate's in the background. You've got Ted, who's like being sort of the disappointment and the expressions. So then
yeah,
Steve brings up basically the fact that Dot told them that it was this other copper last
yeah,
series, and that he was so quick at seemingly wanting to close the caddy case.
yeah,
And that's another thing that you see Kate sort of go and jot that down because
yeah,
she was showing a doubt a couple of episodes ago about this sort of why were we told it was one person and now it's not. And that's when you're starting also to see some of Dot's sort of, he's so clever in some ways and he's so good at tricking people in some ways.
Yeah.
But this was almost an overreach a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't know what you feel like.
Yeah, he's starting to overreach and he's starting to put his foot on it.
Yeah. And then yes, the envelope comes back.
Yeah.
So Steve is also talking about him wanting to delay that evidence, and there's a pattern, is what he's arguing, of Dot delaying things and not wanting to sort of immediately get things looked at. And then Dot bursts, and so they go over the envelope, and then Dot, which I thought was a very telling line, bursts out with, "That's not what was in the envelope."
Yeah,
When
and
they
it's a
talk
way he
about the
said,
list.
yeah, and it's a way he said it, because you can hear the panic in his voice almost.
Yeah, and that's Craig also. That, like I said, there's gonna be a lot of praise of a lot of the main characters. I mean, actors. Sorry, he sort of
Yeah,
goes from cocky to sort of in control, and then there's little slips, and that's one of them. It's the way you're right. It's the way he says it as well.
yeah,
And I think even Ted gives him a bit of a look, doesn't he?
yeah,
And then he comes out with his next bit of evidence. Like I said, this is like a tennis match.
yeah,
That it wasn't a list. So now he's acting like the list that never existed.
yeah,
It was a golf tee.
yeah. And the golf tees, the significance back to the caddy, which will come back. Who, it's, it'll come back to how he got and how he and to that in a bit.
Because you got to remember that
Yeah,
envelope, the front of it had Steve's name on.
yeah,
So Dot basically saying, "Oh yes, Danny was
yeah,
telling us who the caddy was, and it was you."
yeah,
And another bit of, it's sort of said very quickly, but you could blink and you miss it. The golf tee was sequestered evidence. I don't know if I've said that word right, because
yeah,
of Jill. Basically, him and Jill were holding on to this, or hadn't told Ted about this
yeah,
until this interview.
yeah,
So that sort of links to what happens in a couple of scenes' time.
yeah,
It's because, like I said, because now, like I said, there's a lot going on here. Yeah, now after that interview, Ted has a meeting, doesn't he, with Dot?
yeah. And yeah, and he's like, why did you not tell me about the why did you not tell me about the goal and the goal key the evidence was sort of hidden from the investigation up until this age of it. I can't remember how he
Well, yeah,
said
he
it.
sort of
Yeah.
he balls. This is another Ted is
Mhm.
fully shouting at this point, and he sort of
Yeah,
is saying, like, "Have you got any other
mhm.
surprises? I don't like being left in the dark.
Yeah,
Why didn't you come to me?" And Dot's like, "Well,
yeah,
we had to keep it secret
mhm.
because of Steve." And
Yeah,
Ted just sort of dismisses him very quickly, doesn't he?
yeah,
And then Jill sort of is, "Oh yeah, she's good. She has a few really good scenes coming up." So and then
yeah.
Jill sort of,
Yeah, she's a right bitch in this episode.
yeah. So then Jill sort of says, "Well, Dot, I had the same worries as Dot." And then I think at this point you can see she was starting to lose the trust of Ted, but now she's fully lost it.
Yeah,
Because then he brings up the file. "Why did you give me a doctored file?"
yeah,
And she sort of is like, "Well, I can't reveal how I got it." And she's sort of very, she doesn't quite have an answer for that one, does she, yet?
no,
And then she brings up that Fairbanks legal team.
Oh yeah, I'm to say he's got that he's been tests and that he's having a cognitive test because I suspected dementia, which would make him unfit to stand trial.
Yeah, so basically that Ted and his team didn't have him
Yeah,
looked at by GP. They didn't take his medical sort of needs into consideration, and he's
yeah.
got dementia, so he can't stand, and that
Mhm.
you should drop the charge. So we're already sort of starting to see why he threatened Kate, that he did have a backup plan, he did have something
Yeah,
to basically get him off the hook, and then that just makes Ted even more angry, doesn't it?
yeah,
And sort of he sends her off very sort of, I want nothing now to do with you.
yeah,
And we have a very quick scene of Dot, which is interesting, which he sends a text.
yeah. He sends a he sends a text to the people that are above him, presumably in the OCG, and he says it's on, and so am I. I basically is what the text read.
Yeah, so it's sort of that vibe again of, yes, he was the caddy and he had a lot of pull, but he's just an underling still.
Yeah,
He's still taking orders from somebody. And then
yeah.
a very quick, and now, which seems to be a theme of this series, if you kill a certain character,
Oh
they're going to come back
yeah,
to haunt you.
oh yeah, they sort of screwed up aspects in where you see when you see when you see um Benton's face of the well, what?
Yeah, so that's sort of another spooky moment that they now seem to like to do.
Yeah,
And now this is when Kate, like I said, this is her starting to sort of show her skills, because just as Ted's about to make the call to the Crown
yeah,
Prosecution Service,
I mean, yeah, she tells his things about AC's and he's undercover operation in the whole AC to apartment because everybody gets dragged in.
well, that's a
If you go
later bit.
undercover on
But at
the
this point, she's saying basically what, like I said, if you're watching her during the interview, it's not a surprise that there's some things that don't match up with the evidence against Steve.
yeah,
And she sort of isn't, like you said, she's not buying it hook, line, and sinker anymore with Doc.
yeah,
And now we get another scene with probably another reason to make you not like Sam, Steve's
yeah.
girlfriend.
Oh God, yeah, goes and visits him and she goes and visits him in the prison when the hell and like it's and Karen basically he says we can move back in. I'm sorry about the closing the house for hundreds and she kind of blows him off because she's a
Well, she's
terrible human being.
well, she also says I'm on desk duty, so it's affecting her now that Steve's suspected to be the caddy. And yeah, she completely. It's like we can't, without saying it. She does break up with him, and
Yeah,
it's just like he's banged up. He could lose his job. He could be put in prison for a murder, and now his girlfriend has dumped him. So, like I said, this is just the worst day possible for Steve on the planet.
and yeah, and she keeps saying, okay,
Yeah,
thanks for
thank you for
joining us.
popping in.
Mhm.
So now sort of to go with this theme of Kate sort of chasing the evidence against Steve.
Yeah.
Now we have another scene with Jill where she's like, "Why haven't you phoned the Crown prosecution?" Yeah. And she gets basically arrested or charged, or I don't know the terms. I'm not that good yet.
Yeah.
And her face is a picture.
Yeah.
So she basically gets put under caution, and she's asked by Kate, "Where did that file come from?"
Oh yeah. And like she said, and like he says it comes from the from yes, or Justin, whom we've already seen from series 2 from the major violent crime unit. It was supplied to Jill from her, but like the original copy didn't have the actions, so it's all so it had been put to by the time Jill and she
Yeah, and they try and push her, don't they? To well,
yeah
before you got it, basically, who had it,
yeah
and who was like the go between obviously Rogerson and you, and we found out, surprise, surprise,
yeah
it's Dot.
yeah.
So that's another like mark now against Dot.
Oh Jesus, Wendell, you don't encourage mafia.
Oh no, we can have a competition. Who can have the best puns?
Yeah, yeah,
Wendy's will probably be cleaner. Anyway,
yeah,
so yeah, so that's another thing against Dot, and that theme of overreaching is going to keep coming up
yeah,
because now they're looking at the traffic camera images
yeah.
with PC Bin. Oh, I can never say her
Yeah,
name.
yeah, PC, and Jira, I think
Yeah,
that's how you
Bindra,
say
I think, and they're following basically Steve's car
yeah,
and trying to get like a route for it through the traffic cams,
yeah,
and they work out that it hovered
yeah,
around Denton's place,
yeah,
and it hovered a few different places, which Steve could have done,
yeah,
but it wouldn't have been easy for him.
yeah,
And and a big thing is fake plates.
yeah,
Oh no, she's all Matthew. We like PC. We just can't say a name. We do actually
yeah,
like the actress and the character.
yeah, the cat, yeah, no, actually, so pretty good. We are just, she had an easier name to
As you can
pronounce.
tell by this stream, we're really good at names, so don't give us an opportunity to mess them up. So yeah,
Yeah,
there's the fact that there was you could tell basically this car is circling, and they said that's a bit odd. And
yeah,
also, why would Steve be driving around with fake plates?
yeah,
Which is another like, and you can tell that Kate and now Ted, because he's a part of it. You're starting
yeah,
to see sort of Dot's story, which he's weaved, starting to fall apart now against Steve.
yeah.
And all the key bits. Yes, there's evidence there, but they don't quite add up. It's sort of the vibe.
And 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 then it's time for PC Bandura to take at home because like he's apparently he's apparently yeah on on which hasn't ever been explored to which is my only criticism in this episode today. But by the time she by the time she gets ready to go home, she's else felt aiming to take Abraham with the lift, and it's at that point maybe where she tells her that Nick Orton will and will have to keep him about the forensics.
Yeah, she sort of says she got pressured, doesn't she, by Dot?
Yeah,
And like once again, this is the theme of it's almost in Dot trying to double check and trying to make
yeah,
sure he's got enough evidence against Steve. Now the more obvious he's
yeah.
coming across. And then we get a very quick little scene from one of our favourites, good old Nige.
Oh yeah, and I mean, so he gets called for Ken to give more evidence, but this time against Orton, and and it's he says, and it's to because he's such because he's such a it kind of chops up the word immune here, and I can't say it the way he says it because it's like
Well,
instead
no,
of
he goes, it's a brilliant line. And also, obviously, Neil Morrissey, who's the actor,
yeah, honestly,
he's known for comedy. So I think he's almost bringing a bit of his comedy background, but it's said
yes,
so really darkly. But it is a bit, it's quite funny how he says three words, and then he goes, mu. Oh no, even I can't do it. Immunity. That's how he does
yeah,
it.
yeah, and I start laughing when I heard that. It's
He's
brilliant.
got it's and that's why it's good sometimes I think to cast people in like a show like Line of Duty who aren't
Yeah,
known for sort of very dark shows like this
yeah,
because they can bring a bit of their other background into it, and he does. It's a brilliant little one line.
yeah,
So sort of all the so this is another big chunk now. So we've had the Steve interview, which is a
yeah.
big old sort of back and forward tennis match.
Now we get the top partner. How do you know?
And this. I think I like them the same amount, both the Stephen and the Dot interview for different reasons.
Yeah,
Because you can see he's spooked from the beginning because he's been called in,
yeah,
and he's sort of at the first you see the sort of the calm Dot when he sits down, don't you?
yeah,
Sort of I'm fine, I'm going to get out of this sort of Dot,
yeah,
and they sort of at first there's quite a bit of same information which we already knew, sort of repeated about Steve and the Denton.
yeah,
But the first sort of thing that I've noted for the thing that's sort of the start of him getting tricked
yeah,
is this theme which Steve brought up of him not chasing things, him not doing autopsies or forensic checks or things that he should
yeah,
because he didn't do that. There's no record of him for sending a second autopsy
yeah,
for. Oh, and I tried to catch the name and I couldn't for one of the bodies, and I think it's the one that Kate question that first moment when Kate started to question him. I think
So
it's that
the
body.
yeah, Odd Kennedy.
Yeah, I think it's kind of that's it. It's Rod Kennedy. That there's no records, even
Yeah,
though he said, "I'm gonna do a second autopsy. I'm gonna send
yeah,
one off." Sorry,
yeah,
there's no records of that,
mhm,
and you can see then he's sort of like a bit like the Fairbanks actually. Like his you can see his body language starts to change, and his sort of
yeah,
back starts to get up now.
yeah,
And another, and I don't know. I hope this is Craig's little added thing because it works. You start to see him drinking more. He's got a bit of water, and you start to
yeah,
see him take more drinks the more nervous he gets.
yeah,
So then they then sort of the big one of the big things is they search his surface is his service vehicle.
Yeah.
And at first he's like, "Oh, you can't do that. I'm not under arrest. Like, you haven't got the right to do it." And they go, "Well, your service vehicles is basically a police vehicle. We can search it whenever we want."
Yeah.
And that's where, and to be honest, I think the only little nitpick I've got is this comes across a little bit amateur from Dot.
Yeah.
And that's that they find fibers in his boot that match the rope that was found when they arrested Harry.
Yeah.
So that's basically saying you planted that rope there. It was never there to do anything to you. You planted it. So you've got, obviously, like I said, him not chasing things. You have that fiber search, and he does sort of say, doesn't he, as a sort of a deflect. Oh, it's probably got my jacket, and I always put my jacket in my boot. Yeah. But then, and this is why Nige came back. We find out finally what was in that phone. What was this piece of evidence that Nige had over him?
Yeah, and it was it was past phone calls that he past phone calls that he Tommy Hunt had him here, so it's all in that book. It's all in that perfect detail set of phones that were checked.
Yeah, and he sort of has a moment, doesn't he? And then he recovers and basically says, "Oh, I know who your source is.
Yeah.
Let's not kid each other. It's Nigel."
Yeah.
And he's been having that over me for years.
Yeah.
And then he basically says, and he you can't trust him. He's been claiming benefits and like disability allowance. So now he's like completely turning on Nige because he's put this bit of evidence in front of him. Then, not as much of a big one, but basically the booking officer matches Steve's account that he did return the gun.
Yeah. You get so all of that's been essentially forged.
Yeah, that's another hint of which Steve did say in his interview, somebody's forged that, and so the fact that the sergeant, I said I'm not good with rank still, even though I've watched this show, was basically matching Steve.
Yeah.
And then I think this is probably Dot's biggest mistake comes up now. And that's when Kate says, how could you have warned me about a link or like a lead panning out about Steve? Before it was possible, basically, for him to know.
And he hesitates for a couple of minutes before forming his half-assed that answer. It's basically the Arnett was behaving suspiciously around to the office, and that's basically the only thing he says about it, really.
Yeah, and like for the first half, he's had little blips, but he's kept his cool, hasn't he? Dot, and then this is now he's scrambling, I would say, a little bit now for the rest of the interview.
Yeah.
Because they ask him basically, where were you then when Denton got shot?
And ironically, he says the exact same thing as Steve in his
which in Steve's interview, he fully took the mick out of and sort of ridiculed him for.
Yeah.
But even before he says that, he hesitates again, doesn't he?
Yeah.
And then Steve, and then Kate, which I think said another brilliant little line and acting from Vicky. Yeah. She goes, "Well, you've said," and she goes, so you can prove you were there because you've just said it on tape.
Yeah.
And then, like, Dot gives her a look. She sort of looks at him back.
Yeah.
And I think he gets to hint that she's basically saying, I can prove you weren't there.
Yeah.
And this is what you're going to say in a like a court of law.
Yeah.
And now a certain thing happens, which is what, if you're a part of the fan base for this show, this is what this finale is known as.
Alright, I know what they're getting at. So he said, so he says, wait a minute, let me let me check your calendar, let me check my calendar, and he has the exit, exit 8 basically to try and
there is obviously, which we should have pointed out, that there's 2 armed guards like outside of this interview taking place, and he says on his text, "Oh, sorry, folks, apparently some of you getting interruption. Hopefully it fixes itself." And this is what this finale is known as: urgent exit required, which is what he texts. And then, like we said, up in this point, it's been a lot of interviews. It's been a lot of sort of quiet, hasn't it, for a finale? It's been quite low key.
Yeah.
And then he sends that text, and what happens, Daniel?
He sends it to the armed guard, and the armed guard shoots other guard beside him, and then shoots through them.
Sorry, folks, I just had a call through this come through. So so now everything explodes, and we get a lot of action. So the armed guard attacks the other one, and Dot basically does a legs it. He runs for it.
Yeah.
And so this is, and then Kate just takes up after him. Sorry, a messenger beep. Sorry, folks. So Kate just sets off. She's off like clappers as well.
Yeah.
So now we have a chase scene. We have a very sort of what Line of Duty does very well, which is a very action-packed chase, basically throughout.
Yeah.
As soon as they get out of the building, and Dot is sort of, he's also got a gun. Sorry, doesn't he? He gets a gun.
Yeah.
And then he's legging it. Kate's going after him.
Yeah.
And then when they do they have one moment when they see each other, don't they? Through like a fence.
Yeah.
And he's basically telling Kate to stop. He's basically warning her off, isn't he?
Yeah. So she basically shoots the so she basically shoots the guard to the or shoots him out.
Yep. So she shoots one, and also, sorry, like I said, this is another. I love it. It's hectic. It's brilliantly done, but there's a lot going on. So she's also phoning Hastings a couple the back and forward, isn't she? Basically updating him because he's trying to get an armed unit to back her up, because she's basically by herself at this point. There's nobody else going after Dot.
Yeah.
So she's then has another exit for him. Then they have another like final sort of face off, and this is quite interesting because they actually have a few bits of dialogue now, don't they, between each other?
Yeah.
And that Kate's basically saying, "They groomed you. You know all these names. You know all this information. Just tell us."
And you protected all these disgusting monsters that are going to be puzzled, right?
And Dot once again is saying, get out while you can. Do not follow me. So this is quite interesting because Dot has got many flaws, and he's not a nice bloke. But you're starting to see maybe there's a good moral like bit left in Dot because he's basically telling Kate you're gonna get killed, isn't he?
Yeah.
Like, don't chase me. And Kate's just saying, no, you know too much.
Yeah.
And I'm not gonna let you go. Well, that's what I'm saying, Sudoku. He's starting to show good bits here. So it makes you sort of question all that coming on to Kate.
Yeah.
Yes, he was doing it for evidence and to protect himself, but was he genuinely actually quite liking of her?
Yeah.
So was it a mixture? And I'm starting to believe. I remember watching this the first time, and especially watching it now. Thank you, Lee. See you soon.
Yeah. See, so now.
That basic. Oh, sorry, folks. That basically he actually was starting to fall a bit for Kate, and even she sort of says, doesn't she, in a line, "I was tempted."
Yeah.
So then and then a car comes, which is what he'd arranged and he basically nearly knocks Kate out. So a car comes running by, God, driving. That's what people do, Charlotte.
Yeah.
So she gets knocked. Yeah, cars can't run. And then Dot gets in, and then she does another run. And you've got to feel sorry for Vicky because this looks like it's her doing all this. It doesn't look like a stunt double, does it? So she must have been absolutely done in.
Yeah.
And then she does a really good shot. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Oh, it's perfect. It could have. And it's like right in the passenger window with hotness, so it's a perfect shot almost.
Yeah, so she manages to get it off the road with that shot.
Mm-hmm.
Because which is another interesting point because you can tell she doesn't want to kill him.
Yeah.
She's trying to get him off the road, and then she eventually goes to the car. He sort of tumbles out, doesn't he? So you can see he's very injured at this point.
Yeah.
And then just as she's about to go to him, somebody from his car is about to shoot her. And what does Dot do?
He sacrifices himself.
So, like I said, that sort of bit of the good morality you were starting to see before. The fact that his final act is this, which he could have just let Kate get shot, and he would have probably been picked up and would have been okay.
Yeah.
So, like I said, this is what this showed as well. Just when you think you've got somebody pegged, just when you think you understand somebody, they do an action which feels a bit left field.
Yeah.
So, sorry, folks. So he gets shot.
Yeah. He gets shot and he the record and Cotton's iron collaboration and he mentions your bank's name again. And obviously that will be essential evidence against the bank like issue and essential evidence.
Well, yes, obviously at
Yeah.
the end when they do their little like
Yeah.
catch up almost, we learn that's what he said, but at this point we don't quite know, do we? But if you think about what Kate said to him, it makes sense because she was basically saying you're protecting Fairbanks. So this is basically we've only got a few more things left to do, which is Kate goes to Steve, and your description made me laugh when you were talking about this scene to me.
Well, yeah, and Kate goes to kill Tim Steve, and he does kind of start eyeing it again, which kind of annoys me. Makes me, makes him out to be. is um, some sort of an emotional mess.
Well, like I said, think about all the things that have happened to him
Yeah,
this
but it doesn't
series
suit,
now.
it doesn't suit his character.
Well, like I said, I think with Steve, a lot of the cockiness, it's a front.
Yeah,
A lot of the sort of look at me, aren't I good, nothing can touch me,
yeah,
is his mask. It's a front. So I think the whole point almost of this
yeah,
storyline, I think, is to show us actually Steve, beneath all of that, is
yeah,
actually quite vulnerable.
yeah,
He can get emotional and he's human. So that is what I like about this storyline. That
yeah,
once again you're seeing Steve some a different side to him,
yeah,
and it's sort of stripped back, and now you're really seeing everything to bear with Steve. With obviously the Doc trying to fit him up to be the caddy, and all
yeah,
the other things that sort of happen because of that consequence.
yeah,
So yeah, and then we have basically the episode's over, and we have a few like afterward scenes, don't we? Which is
yeah,
Kate gets an award. She finally gets to be a DS,
yeah.
and then we see what Fairbanks basically the consequences finally of that Fairbanks gets.
He gets him 5 years for a once saying you tribute it like he gets 5 years and gets put on a certain register,
Yeah, and
which again I won't say is specific to way, but do them Sky Joker just doesn't like when you say exactly what it is, but you can get the drift here.
yeah, and then that's when you work out, and it does say there thanked because of the evidence Doc gave. So
Yeah.
that's when you do properly find out that's what he whispered.
And Orton, Orton is now retired, but he has to up the whole disability benefits thing. Oh,
Well, that's another thing. It's what sorry, Dot said. Oh, he's faking. He's not actually got a disability. And what do we see in his little scene? What's he doing?
I I get the one more out in this X a cup in the veranda at the house basically.
So, to the surprise of no one, I suspect at this point, yes,
Yeah,
he's not got an injury. He's faked it the whole time for money because Dot, sorry, because Nige is slimy.
yeah, but they kind of already knew that because yeah, I last series.
That's what I mean. It's not a surprise, but
Yeah,
I like that in these even in these little afterwards clips, they
yeah,
give you little like answers or little
yeah,
things of yeah, you probably already knew this, but here's the fact that he doesn't need the stick
yeah.
because these could just be like afterthoughts. But I like that there's these little details if you look.
And and then and then and then ain't got um ain't got a funeral, but nobody was allowed to attend.
Oh no, it
Okay.
wasn't that he was allowed. Nobody just
Yeah.
turned up
Oh
because it was I can't think of the wording, but basically
yeah. I did
the council was
I mean I I must funeral
yeah,
whatever.
like it's basically because her
Yeah,
mum's dead. If you think about it, and you got the vibe there's no other family members on the scene, so it was the council was I can't think of the word they had a term, which is basically the council sorted it and nobody came.
yeah.
So yeah, and that's the finale. Like I said, it's it's finished. We've finally done series 3, folks. We got there.
Yeah, so guys, kill way before what else? Shall we get other shout outs? give me your scores in the chat.
No
And
more info.
and you you win for activity to give us scores. What are you? What is your score for this episode?
Oh, this is why I gave last week a 8 or 9 because this is a 10. This can be nothing but a 10. It perfectly wraps up as well, which I think we didn't really say a lot. It's a lot of wrapping up of stuff from the last 2 series coming together.
Yeah.
It's brilliant performances across the board. I don't think there's a bad performance in this, honestly.
Yeah.
It's sorry. Sorry, folks. As you can tell, I've got a cough.
And yeah, should I give my yeah, so carry on, sir.
Yeah.
Just
So
don't, just don't, just don't choke, just don't choke from my stream or YouTube. They may be on my face.
I know, and you won't have a co-host anymore. So yeah, brilliant performances. It's the tension in the Dot stuff. As soon as he gets into the interview, is just you feel on edge. You feel it building,
Yeah.
and it just sort of gets more and more and more. Like I said, I like Steve sort of having that breaking point in this episode, and sort of him sort of failing and sort of breaking down. There's no other word for it.
Yeah.
And it's just sort of sad, but it's so sort of compelling at the same time to see Kate, who I think she has been not as good up till this point in this series. She comes to the floor and basically saves Steve, gets the evidence together. So sort of the partnership which we thought they had is back, which is nice. Yeah, so it's a 10.
Yeah.
What's your score then, Daniel?
I'm going to give it 4 marks as well, but I'll get reacted by Epstein, Parkinson, McClure, and Bob. Basically, everybody, across the board gave good gave good performances, and I tell you this finale was structurally different. Um, structurally different than the other. The finale we've had so far because you did a sort of a change in finale because you can't always have that action packed home you would build up for us still for the finale. For the show it can I so was happy at the change of format at the finale.
Yeah, but it looks like most people have gone with 9s or 10s.
Yeah,
And thanks, Sudoku. I love the fact that it's not "Don't die, we care about you." It's "Don't die, you're going to be on the TARDIS zone this weekend."
yeah,
Nice to know I'm valued, everybody.
if you want to see my co-host at break, you can tune in the sun. Do what I'm streams.
That was this Sunday just gone. If you want to
You
see me, get as close as you probably heard me on the stream.
so Sadaki gets it in the $9.5 he gets it. Same as us. A few, what was it? Right, they gave it, and this
But you nodded off, nearly.
oh, thanks very much. I hope you're meaning the actual episode,
No,
not
you mean
us.
the episode.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Right, so just before we finish up, shall we, do you want to get have your shout-outs.
Yeah, so as Sudoku said, if you want to listen to me probably be a lot happier watching Classic Who, that's on Saturdays on the TARDIS Zone. And if you want to see me further, have the pleasure of experiencing a certain showrunner and doctor for another episode after not loving, that's your hint. The last one I will be doing episode 4 because I said I'm tired, folks. And another shout out is and also on this Sunday coming up, and Wendy's in the chat, so shout out for her. You can hear both me and Wendy on the Script Doctors, and
Yeah.
then finally, lovely Dan Hadley and Type 40, which I'm also doing reviews on Flux for them, and I'm on Thursday nights live. God, that was a lot to say.
Yeah. Yeah, and also as well, make sure you do report over in the Sunday Thursday the zone streams because like I'm enjoying seeing my co-hosts getting orchard. This
But
absolutely
also, that's
lovely.
which is weirdly happened. Watch me and Lee get in sync with each other and tell
Yeah,
Noel he's wrong. That is what's
yeah,
mainly happened for the last 2 episodes.
yeah. Yeah, so it'll be a fun time anyway for Charlotte. Anyway, I get extra different streams, but in terms of myself, I'm taking a break till January and we'll see what comes from that. Basically, because I'm in need of a break if I'm honest with you, because I'm out of something. Every I probably already yeah.
But you will meet him and talk with Daniel in chats, so you still see at least his lovely little one-liners. And like he said, he's enjoying watching us all suffer, so he'll have fun there.
Yeah, a special is Charlotte.
Yeah, but all
Yeah.
that means is, mate, I'm just more sarky with you on stream, so that's the payoff.
Oh boy, here we go. Yeah. Yeah. So make sure to like, share, the stream far and wide. Subscribe if you haven't already. Doing kill. Like, the forward whenever it has become so that we can so that you can find out what bit of content that we've got coming up basically and yeah thanks to everybody in the chat and we'll see you soon good have a good have a good rest of your week and
And happy Christmas. And hope you all have a good day next month, because obviously, like Daniel said, we're having our little break on here. So hope you all have a
yeah.
good Christmas and enjoy that day with your families.
And yeah, and also, and yeah, and also as well, and also when we become back, it'll be the start of the new year. So yeah, so if I don't see you with much, I'm sure I will see you in chats, but like happy New Year when it comes in.
Yeah, happy New Year, everybody. Then, because but you'll probably see me about somewhere. So
Yeah.
have a good one, folks.
Uh, and here's and he and here's the channel trail. Have a good one. And thanks for the support of it.